everyone. Good morning. A bit ill at ease, but there's not a shame. So, wonderful to be here, wonderful to see this beautiful event. So the question was, what have I learned since October 7th? I thought about it, and then I realized it's not very interesting what I learned. The more interesting thing is, what have we learned since October 7th? Even more importantly, what have we not yet learned on October 7th, and we need to learn? So I'll try and answer those two questions. What have we learned? So I thought about it this morning, and I broke it up into 3 things, which I think we all learned. It was a hard lesson, the worst way to learn things, but we learned 3 things, but as I'll say, they're not enough. So the first thing we learned is that we can no longer retreat into our borders and not care about what's going on the other side of the borders. Or we can put it another way, you can try to forget about the world, but the world doesn't forget about you. We may think we only want to live peacefully and quietly in our own little land, and we'll have borders. For decades now we've been receding, we've been going inside, retreating, and keeping our borders and thinking about ourselves. But then it turns out that sinister forces will gather at our borders and will plot against us. And maybe other people can retreat into their borders, but we Jews cannot. We have to care about what's going on the other side of the border. We have to be more involved in what's going on the other side of where we are. We need to be far more alert as to our borders. So that's one thing we learned. The other thing we learned, again, this could be not necessarily true for other nations, but for us, it turns out we can't just concentrate on our infighting and our factions and let the rift become bigger and bigger and louder and more bitter, and think that it's not going to have consequences. We learned in the hardest of ways that if the infighting continues and deepens, and this, in Hebrew we call this a conversation of deaf people, siach elshim, and each one feels unheard, so it shouts even more. And then the shouting increases, the misunderstandings increase, the polarization into camps. So maybe other nations can afford to do so, I doubt it, but we for sure, if we do that, that weakness will be exploited. It goes back to the borders, and we learned that we can't go on. We need to, and now the slogan became B'yachad Nenatzech. And the third, and maybe the most subtle lesson we've learned, is that the vision of a secular, liberal utopia, of people just leading out their mundane lives, not caring about theological issues, not caring about profound religious concepts. We can put it behind us, we can create a modern, secular, democratic utopia. If we don't address the presence, the meaning of God in our world, other people will do it, and they will shout. Doing their horrible things that they're doing, they will shout God's name the way they refer to God, and it may not be the nicest God. It may not, if we don't make God present in our lives, other people will make their God present in our lives, and in the worst possible way. So that's the most subtle, because I don't think everyone has learned this, but many people have acknowledged this. I just learned today that there's a website called Safaria, which is like a website that has all the Jewish sources in it. One of several, one of the most user-friendly ones, I think. And on October 6th, they had 250,000 views a day. On October 7th, it tripled into 750,000 views a day, and has maintained that throughout that year. So it turns out that we realized that religion is part of our lives, basically. And we were made to realize this by people for whom religion is a very essential part of their lives. It's in every word they shout as they go out to commit their atrocities. So these are the 3 things we learned, but they're not enough. It's a good start. But each one of these insights we need to take it one step further. But before, I want to add just the main thing I do in life is I teach what is called Pnimiyut Torah, the inner dimension of the Torah, Kabbalah and Chassidut, right? The more profound levels, the samech of the Pardes, right? The deeper levels that have to do with the esoteric wisdom, Pnimiyut Torah, Kabbalah and Chassidut. And the three questions I just said, I think it really helps to remember them also, and also to structure them. If you have a list of things and you suddenly put them around a structure, it helps to better understand it and also better remember it, and then also to think about it more deeply. So there are three concepts that the Baal Shem Tov taught us. He said that everything in the world has these three levels. And he called them olamot, worlds, which is just the outside manifestation of something. Neshamot, souls, that's higher. It's the subjective inner level of the motivation and the inner experience of what's happening. Souls. And then elokut, godliness. Right? Beautifully, your English speakers, it's take the word, the Hebrew word, olamot, neshamot, elokut, the acronym, the initials, they make it the word one. It's very nice. God is one God. So this one God creates olamot, world, neshamot, and above all is his own essence, his own being, elokut. So the three insights have to do with the three levels. That we can't just forget about our borders, forget about the outside world. You can forget about the world will forget about you. It has to do with worlds. There's my world, there's other people's world, but it has to do on a very political, military, strategic level. The infighting, the factions, and the inner rift within the right and the left, and the secular and the religious, and all the different tribes of Israel, that has to do with the neshamot, souls. The reason we're split up into all these camps is that we have different soul roots, different values, different emphases. We need to bring them together somehow, but it has to do ultimately with different souls, perspectives. And finally, how much place, room we give to God in our lives, to Hashem in our lives, has to do with elokut, of course. So that's godliness. So the three insights have to do with olamot, neshamot, elokut. Now, when the Baal Shem Tov explained about these three levels, he said that all these levels, they don't stay put. Each one of them has to constantly evolve and grow, and you have to advance it in some way, but it's in three different ways. So he said, olamot, olim. The world need to be elevated all the time. You need to elevate the worlds. The worlds, you can live in the world and forget about your soul, forget about God. The worlds need to be elevated. Olamot, olim. Neshamot, they can't just be, let them be. But neshamot mitkashrot. They interconnect, they create relationships, and they inter-include, they learn from one another, they teach one another, they give, they have to constantly be in a state of dialogue and growth, of tying themselves more one to each other. So, olamot olim, neshamot mitkashrot, they tie and interconnect. Elokut mityachedet. Elokut has to be more and more unified. That is, we have to constantly, it's an everlasting, eternal journey of uniting more with God and understanding more and more just how God is truly one on all these levels. Just like I said, you can see it as the acronym of one. So let's think how we can take these three insights that we have learned and try to answer the bigger question that I put in the beginning, which is, what have we not yet learned? Because what we have not yet learned is far more important than what we've learned. And if we only tell ourselves, oh, we've learned so much, we've changed so much, ever since October 7th, we're going back to the mistake of October 6th, of thinking we know everything that's going on, and not realize there are more surprises waiting for us. So we have to be one step ahead. One step ahead is to ask what we have not yet learned. And we can just take all the three insights and take each one of them to the next level. So let's take the first insight. The first insight was, we can't just retreat into our borders and forget about what's happening on the other side. Not only do we have to be more vigilant, more alert, to have better intelligence, and maybe to have, how do you call it,
security.
A security belt, or there's another area that you control, a buffer zone. That's still the same insight. We have to remember that we have a vision that needs to spread beyond our borders. We have to be a light unto the nations. we have to think about the good, the betterment of all mankind. If we think nationalistically, and that, I think, in many ways was the cardinal sin, is that a worldview that only stresses what Judaism is, a nation that needs national sovereignty and independence and so on, the fact that it took over other elements of what Judaism is really about, led to the fact that we try to forget about other nations and what they're doing, and we have to suffer the consequences. We have to turn this around, flip this around. We have to remember that we're not just about building a Beit Le'umi, a national home, also that, but not just that. It also has to be a Beit LeHashem, has to be a house for God, but also be Beiti Beit Tfilah Yikareh Lechol Ha'amim, my house shall be a house of prayer for all the nations. And even our enemies have learned this. They sent out proxies. They didn't just focus on their own land. They realized that in order to affect the world, you need to, for them, we use the term tentacles. So, we need to think about outreach, about sending arms, sending rays of light, spreading, being a fountain of light. We need to send out rays of light. We need to think about how to influence the entire Middle East, to think about the future. We are not the only people suffering from Iran. The Gazans are suffering, the people in Lebanon are suffering, the people in Yemen are suffering, and the people in Iran are suffering. And the people in the West are also at a loss around so many different things. So we have to not just look out for our borders, we have to cross our borders spiritually, outside, and to think, go back to thinking just like our first patriarch, Abraham, thought, that he wants to bring the light of monotheism, the light of truth, the light of gratefulness to God, and blessing for your food, and today it's far more than that, all the wisdom we've accumulated. We need to share this with the world, we need to bring this out into the world. So it's taking the first insight. This is elevating the world. It's not just making sure you are more alert about what's going on outside your border. And it's not just extending beyond your border so that you watch out for it. All this is still strategic thinking on a very superficial level. We have to flip the whole mindset from retreating to extending, to going outside, to being the teachers of mankind, the priests of mankind, to bless mankind, to bring. And other religions are doing this. And we have put it into our head that because we're not like them, we're not missionaries, it's not about being a missionary, it's about sharing the light and the wisdom and the truth that we have, and the accumulated wisdom that we have, and the whole world can benefit from this. So we have to flip our mind and elevate the world, not just be more careful about how to survive in the world. And it also has to do with growing out of survival mentality. The second insight was that we can't go on just fighting, it'll have consequences, they're going to exploit our weaknesses. So it's not just that. It's not just B'yachad Nenatzech. B'yachad Nenatzech is one aspect of uniting. It could be superficial, you can fight together, and then you can, when the external threat is gone, we'll go back. It's a real danger, we'll go back to where we were the day before. Neshamot mitkashrot, souls interconnecting, coming together, creating bonds, it's far deeper than that. It's realizing that the Jewish nation, the notion of tribes is taking on new form every generation. And some of the tribes may seem like they have nothing to do with Judaism, but it's not true. They're part of the Jewish nation. And they care about values that are very precious. And to realize that we need to listen and learn and integrate the different truths, the different values that in and of themselves are all very commendable. That each tribe, each miflaga, each party is parting ways, right? Mitzpaleg. We need to take the whole, we have a terrible party system, so many parties. But that's because we have 70 opinions. There are 70 facets to our Torah. And if you look carefully, each and every view and value and party, political party, you can find there's a facet in the Torah that gives strength to that party. So if we stop thinking about which one is right, which one is wrong, or which one is right, which one is left, and we start thinking about right and left themselves as concepts, as parts of a broader truth, a divine truth that is trying to speak through different parties. It's not just B'yachad Nenatzech, is biyachad nilmad, and biyachad nohav, and biyachad we'll discuss. And so this biyachad has to be far more profound than just winning the external enemy. We ourselves are one nation. And the different voices that are being sounded are really at root, they stem from the 70 facets of the Torah, from the 70 root souls that came into Egypt, the children of Yaakov. So neshamot mitkashrot is to make sure that this interconnected, this inner peace within ourselves is also upgraded to sitting together, really trying to figure out what it is that the other side that I don't understand, I can't figure out where they're coming from. Try to figure out where they're coming from. Empathize to the point that you can realize that you could have been them, and then you can, and then an integration will begin. The one went back when we had every year we had 2 bchirot. So right, we had 5 in a row. So my Rabbi of Ginsburg, he said that it's a good exercise, maybe not to do it in real time, but when you go behind the Pardes, behind the little curtain, where you go to vote, and you see all the parties, he said you should, in theory, be there and feel that you could vote for each one of them, or you could have voted, within a certain mindset, and then you choose the one that you ultimately think is better. But you need, so maybe you'll get shouted to you need to leave the curtain and vote already. But maybe you should do it at home, put a list. So that is putting us in the mindset of. And finally, we have the unification with God. So we realized again that the religious element is still alive and well. And we can't live without religion. And we have this fundamentalist religion that wants to take over the world. And what does it mean to be unified more with God? So basically what it means is that we need to see Him present in every aspect of our lives. We need to realize that it's not just our Father, that's what has awakened. You see people all over the country, and they're singing, and they're saying, we have no one to rely on other than our Father in heaven. God came back as a fatherly figure. But as we said in Yom Kippurim, again and again, we said, well, this year not so much because it was Shabbat, but every year we say, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu. God is a father, but He's more than a father. There's another, so we have to upgrade all these insights. So the fact that God is a father figure, is a protective figure, someone we can shout to, that came back big time. And the soldiers are praying, and everyone is now saying, and now the Prime Minister, every speech ends with Be'ezrat Hashem, and so on. And all this is like a protective father. But even a child of a father, when he grows up, he understands that his father is not just a protective figure or someone that you can call when you have trouble. He also has a vision, he also has a will, he also has things he wants to pass over to you. Maybe there's a family business that you need to take over, you need to grow up. For us to take over the family business is to think about God also as a Malkeinu, as a king. So the image today is a bit difficult for us to digest, but it basically means that He wants something out of it. He wants us to grow up, not to be just like little children. He wants us to be mature, He wants to count on us, to rely on us, to do what He told us to do, what He said we should do. So to come to terms more with this kind of image. So again, it's difficult to take in sometimes that God is a king, but He's also a father. It's a father king, it's not just some despot sitting in the palace. He comes out to the field, He's like a father. He's also, we have other images, He's also our partner, our spouse. He's Anachnu rayatecha v'ata dodeinu. We are your wife, you are our husband, you are our partner, our spouse. So there's a lot of things to cushion the image of God as a king, but we can't just stay with Avinu. It's wonderful, it's amazing. Everyone is now saying Avinu Shabashamayim, Abba, Tate. But just like the worlds need to elevate and the souls need to interconnect, then we need to unify, attach ourselves more to Hashem, which means also to remember that He gave us this amazing gift. We need to gather around the table and learn it, at least learn it, teach it, and then we'll understand more what our true mission in the world is. And of course, all these 3 levels, they help one another. Because the more you think about Hashem, the more it can put all the souls together and realize where all their opinions are coming from. They're coming from the Torah. And we can also recall that our true vocation, our true mission, is to be not just allowed into ourselves, but allowed into the nations. So, Be'ezrat Hashem, may we proceed from Chayil to Chayil, all of us together.